our goal when we put on a production like this for the community is that we outnumber, the administrative team outnumbers the folks that come. So if any more people show up, I think we're going to have to add to the admin team to make sure that I think we've got a beat this morning. In all reality, this is a bit of a litmus test for us. We are trying to figure out how and why, frankly, it's best for us to communicate with the community. Because it's really important to me that you stay in the know and that you understand what we're doing both strategically, which is where we're going to focus this morning, and otherwise. So communication is really, really important. And the question that we're trying to answer internally is how best do we communicate with you in the community? This is obviously a traditional avenue that we are trying. And I'll say last spring, we did a similar production. And Preston, you can remind me, but I think we had in the neighborhood of 15, 18 people here.
Yes.
And we had 185 or something like that streaming it live on the internet. So I don't know if they were at home in their pajamas. I don't know exactly where they were, what they were doing, but that to me is a bit of a message that maybe we need to start a little more digital communication as well. But I do appreciate you making the effort to be here this morning. And what this does provide, which streaming it online doesn't, is an opportunity to engage and ask questions, which I encourage you to do this morning. So the two focus points this morning are, number one, to make sure that you're aware of who behind the scenes is making everything happen on our campus. So we're going to do some quick introductions of the administrative team. And then I'm going to jump into more specifics about the strategic planning process. I've talked about it a little bit last year as we were putting pieces together. But as you can imagine, during the summer, we have time as an admin team, and I had some time to travel and connect with some colleagues. And we had time to dig into the strategic planning process. So we've got, I would argue, a higher level of focus on what we are going to be tackling from a strategic standpoint here at the school during this school year. And that's where I really want to focus this morning. And again, give you a chance to engage and ask some questions here this morning as well. So let's start. Oh, look at that. Oh, it did. Okay. I thought I lost it. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to do it alphabetically. So it's the easiest way to make it happen, right? So if I'm wrong, alphabetical order, just so we will not be a good sign. So this is Mary Beth Burns, and I'll ask everybody just to give a quick wave. And you don't need to stand up or anything this morning, but Mary Beth is over our lower school programming. Amber Cornett, sitting with Mary Beth. Amber is in charge of our extracurricular programming, which involves both the extended day programming and all of our camps. And Amber has single-handedly expanded the number of camps we're doing. It's just so much fun. There's not a dull moment on campus, and a lot of that is to do the programming that Amber's in charge of. Charlotte's not with us this morning, but Charlotte is in charge of our technology across the campus. Laura is with us. There's no saw there. She's hiding right there. Laura, her business card is bigger than everybody else's because she has so many different titles, one of which is my assistant in our office, which I could not operate without. But she's also in charge of all of our students. So if you have questions about the student building process, Laura is typically the one that answers. Andy is a new face on campus. Andy is with us from upstate New York and has joined the team as director of the head of the upper school. We're happy to have him with us on campus. Ivy is in year 2, so she and I are longtime veterans here, starting to in charge of our college counseling program. And Tom is a veteran. Tom has been here for several years, and Tom is in charge of our athletic programming. Jennifer Hudson, I know, is not with us either this morning, and she's in charge of our campus-wide counseling programming, so she's incredibly important to what happens on campus. Brad just had to step outside the building, but I think he's going to get on his way back in. Brad is in charge of our admissions program. Melody up front, of course. Awesome, thank you. Melody runs our middle school. BJ, again, is not here this morning. BJ doesn't like to be on stage. He takes care of most of his business behind the scenes, and he's actually, I'm really proud of him. BJ works as hard and as long as anybody I've ever met, and I'm so proud of him because he's on vacation right now, which is really, really exciting. Really, it's kind of like a proud papa. It's really exciting. So BJ's not with us, but he's incredibly important to what happens truly behind the scenes from the CFO standpoint. Preston, virtually everything, including this morning, that you'll see communication-wise coming from the school has passed through Preston's capable hands. So thank you, sir, for your work. And Pam Weinberger, I know many of you know through the community for various ways. But Pam takes care of our development programming, and it's not part of her title, but situations like this morning warrant me explaining too that she takes care of a lot of our special events, and it's incredibly helpful in many ways on campus. That is the administrative team that I get to work with most closely on campus. I do my best to get into classrooms and obviously build relationships with the classroom teachers as well. And Laura Evans, of course. I apologize.
No, it's okay. I'm not part of it.
Well, you don't sit around the admin table, but you're certainly an important part of what happens on Yeah, so Laura Evans really wears two hats, helps both in the development end of things and communications. So thank you. But with the time that I have and my availability, it's real tough for me to work specifically with individual faculty members on an extended basis. So to a great extent, the liaisons I have with what's happening in the classroom and elsewhere on campus, the folks that you just met, we get together every couple of weeks as an admin team. And I can tell you it's an incredibly important process for me because the feedback I'm getting from them, from both veterans and new, is incredibly important for us as a school community. It certainly helps me do my job as well as I possibly can. So, as I said, I want to dive into a little bit of the strategic planning process. A couple things have happened for those of you who were with us last spring when we started talking from a strategic standpoint. A couple things have happened. The first and most salient for me, at least personally, was a trip I made this summer. We are, as a school, we are the only school in the state of Georgia that's been selected to be part of the Malone Family Foundation. And I won't go into a great deal of detail about that here this morning. I'd encourage you to look it up or come and see me individually. But essentially it means that we have bestowed upon us a sizable endowment to help us with our financial aid program. And only one independent school in every state was selected by this group, this family foundation, who are really a family that's invested out at Stanford University. And what they were looking for in their eyes, with some very specific criteria, was what they felt was the best independent school in each of the 50 states. And we are the school that was selected in the state of Georgia. So that has some meat to it. That obviously says something about the quality of program that's happening here on our campus. But what I admittedly was a little naive to was the power of the network that I automatically became part of coming to Augusta Prep. So this summer, and what they do every year at Stanford, is hold an annual meeting for the heads of school of the 50 schools that are selected around the country. And I went this summer. And to have an opportunity over a 3+ day window to network with heads of what have been selected as the best independent schools from every state was, as you can imagine, a pretty powerful experience for me. One of the things I liked about that opportunity the most were the opportunities that were built into that program for us as heads of school to talk about things and issues that were happening on our school campus. And one of the heads there put it really well, where he said, regionally, locally, we have an opportunity to build networking and help each other in our schools right here in Augusta. We have a great network of heads, and it's really helpful when we go to lunch together and we learn a lot. But there's some things you're not going to talk about for obvious reasons. And there are other things that if you do get some advice from another school head, it's a regional perspective. And one of the heads at Stanford this summer said something that I had never thought about. He said, look, I can throw something on the table at this conference every summer, and I get a perspective from 5 different time zones, which is a really interesting perspective to have. So, when the opportunity presented itself, I shared, and the word I used with the admin team this summer was, I felt a little unsettled about where we were in the strategic planning process. And all that means is I didn't feel like we were as engaged in the process. I didn't feel like we were making as much progress as I hoped we would, all of which fell back on me. So in talking to our colleagues, the network that I developed out of Stanford, 6 or 7 different schools were having the same challenge. Just didn't feel like they were making the same process. And we compared notes, and we were all doing what I would define as pretty traditional strategic plan. You set a 3-year goal, a 4-year goal, a 5-year goal. You have a whole list of 25 to 30 things you're going to tackle. You have signs and tactics, make sure everybody's responsible for what, and then you communicate with your community. We were doing it. But again, it just didn't feel powerful enough. I felt a little upset. So we talked as a group, and those 6, I think it ended up being 7 schools, all went back to their communities, and literally on the red-eye flight back here to Atlanta, I did some work on it. And what we did was decide to kind of scrap the traditional strategic planning process. Not that we don't have a list of, in our case, 28 strategic initiatives that we're going to tackle over the next 3, 4, 5 years. We do. We have that list. I kind of refer to just keeping it in my back pocket. Because we're going to talk about it internally, administratively, certainly at the board level. We will have that list, so we kind of know where we're headed long term. But it seems real silly, in my mind at least, to look at a goal that you may have set for yourself to try to accomplish 4 years from now, and spend 3 weeks in an administrative structure attaching tactics and how you're going to accomplish that goal. Because in 4 years' time, that goal may look very different for our school community. So we didn't blow up the strategic planning process. We didn't start from scratch by any means. But what we did was apply more focus on an annual basis to what we're going to try to accomplish. So what we've done, and so when I came back from Stanford as an admin team, we spent a great deal of time looking at what initiatives we felt like we could accomplish this school year. And again, we have the master list. We have that to work from. In fact, we've broken that master list down into the next 3 years, next 3 school years, to see what we can accomplish. And we've come up with 11 strategic initiatives that we feel like during the 2016-17 school year, we can tackle as a school community. I'll be honest, I felt like that list would probably be 3 or 4. Because I'm more about quality than I am quantity, which is why I'm glad the folks that are here this morning are here. I'd rather do 3 or 4 things really well than try to tackle 10 and not feel so good about them. But as we started discussing strategic initiatives we had, what we discovered was that a lot of the work that's going to go into achieving these initiatives was already done or in process. So the list, admittedly, at 11 for this school year is a little longer than on that flight back to Atlanta I felt like it probably would be. But I also feel very confident with the team around us. I feel very confident that this is a very manageable list. So, the 3 things I have up for you initially, and then what we're going to do is go through those 11. I'm going to do my best to unpack each of those 11 for you. And certainly, again, if there are questions along the way or at the end of the presentation, I'm eager to hear what you have to say. The first thing that I felt was really important, whether you're doing a traditional strategic planning process, again, that 3-year plan, 5-year plan, however it was, or you're going to be more focused like we are this year, the definition of terms is really important. When you roll out that term, strategic planning, strategic growth, strategic, whatever you want to call it, all these different terms flying around, I'm a big believer that defining what these terms actually mean for us and our community is really important. And the 3 that we picked up were strategic planning itself, strategic growth initiatives, and tactics. And so when we refer to strategic planning, it's the overall process. It doesn't matter if you're thinking about the 28 goals, the 11 goals, but the overall process itself is what we're referring to as strategic planning process. We're referring to each goal that we have set. So again, we're going to look at 11 this morning. We're going to refer to each of those goals as strategic growth initiatives. And the growth piece is important because one of our themes on campus this year is a growth mindset, which encourages in a school community, encourages us to celebrate all the wonderful things that prep is. You look at it academically, artistically, athletically, it doesn't matter. There's a lot to celebrate about who Augusta Prep is. But we also want to keep our eye, this is really ultimately my responsibility, keep our eye on what we can do better. Can we do more? What can we do to become a better school next year, 3 years, 5 years down the road? And that's really what the strategic planning process is. So working that word growth in is important from a thematic standpoint on campus. So strategic growth initiatives really just refer to those goals that we have. And there will be 11 to talk about this morning. And then the tactics is fairly self-explanatory. But the tactics are who's going to be responsible for achieving each of these goals, how are we going to get it done, what kind of resources do we have to dedicate to make that happen. So the tactics are kind of the nitty-gritty, the behind-the-scenes stuff that I would never attempt to roll out in a public forum with this because your eyes will start to roll back in the back of your head and you should quickly. But that's the work that we'll be doing internally with the admin team. And obviously we'll be sharing our progress through the board as well. So really definition terms is where we start. And as I mentioned, we have 28 overall goals. And I know when you're presenting to a group of folks, like I am this morning, it's really important to make sure you can read everything on the screen, unless you're trying to hide something. So I figure I'm trying to hide all kinds of stuff in here because you can't read any of this, right? I don't expect you to read it. That's not the attempt here. I just wanted to show you a quick kind of, I refer to it as a 30,000-foot view of our strategic planning process. So these represent the 28 strategic growth initiatives that I've been referring to. And I just plotted them very quickly on a graph to show kind of start and end dates. And this will be something that we keep updated. This is something we can share with the community. This is something I can share in the boardroom as a quick look at the progress we're making. And the key is real simple. If it's orange, which a lot of the goals that are starting this fall are, that means we're in progress. If it's red, it means we haven't quite got started yet, which makes sense as you go down the road from a timeline standpoint. And very soon, we'll start to be coloring some of these in green when they are actually complete. So the goal at the end of the school year is to have 11 of these items green as we go forward. And this, again, this will just kind of keep us focused, keep me focused, maybe more importantly, as I look at things from a 30,000-foot view. But what I want to do this morning is get away from the 30,000-foot view and maybe come down to about 10,000 feet. And I want to focus on, again, those 11 growth initiatives that we are going to focus on as a school community this year. And I raised 6. And we'll start with 1. That makes a whole lot more sense. Okay, as I'm sure everybody's aware, we'll make fun of Brad when he comes in and we'll tease him about it and poke him as much as we can. But Brad's leaving us this fall. Can't fault the man for being in love. And he's headed north. So from a personal standpoint, I get it, congratulate him, wish him well. On a professional standpoint, we're going to miss him. So we're going to pull together as a team and everything will be fine. I'm not worried about that whatsoever. But it does provide an opportunity for us to go out on a national level and do a search for an admissions professional. So we have a job posted through Southern Teachers Agency, which is a well-known, started as a regional, really is a national search firm for teachers, administrators, even heads of school. So Southern Teachers is actively engaged with us. And there are lots of consultancies to choose from. One of the reasons I like Southern Teachers is twofold. Number one, I've got a long working relationship with them. And secondly, Kerry Goodman, who is the head of the agency, used to be a student at Augusta Prep. And his father was the second headmaster here at Augusta Prep. So to say they are invested in and know our community would be an understatement. Like a lot of consultancies, you can kind of call them up and they'll do their job for you, but they don't really know you as a school. Not the case of Southern Teachers, so I'm excited to work with them again. And then we also have the job posted everywhere else you can imagine, through our regional association, the Southern Association of Independent Schools, the National Association of Independent Schools, and a couple other services that offers the opportunity to collect resumes as well as our own website. So resumes are starting to come in. We hope that the process will allow us to have somebody hired before Thanksgiving. And if given the opportunity, if somebody happens to be available, the right person happens to be available, and they can start before next July, that would be wonderful, because Brad won't be with us. We're going to be pitching in to make all that happen this year. But I presume that most of the people looking to come to Augusta Prep will be actively engaged in another school community through June. So I suspect it'll be in July start. But again, if that opportunity presented itself, that would be wonderful. And just so you know how that process will unfold, we've got a committee put together that's helping us with the initial stages. And later in the fall, probably late October, early November, we will be bringing some finalists to campus. And we will have a parent panel, a student panel. We'll get a lot more feedback that way as well. So we're going to vet these folks as much as we possibly can. So number two, strategic enrollment plan. This one's really important from multiple levels, financially not being the least important of them all. A strategic enrollment plan does a couple things for a school. Number one, it allows you on a long range, and we're going to look at a 10 to 15 year strategic enrollment plan. So over that long range, it allows you to do two things much more efficiently, much better as a school community. The first is scheduling. So when you think about the upper school, just upper school alone, and it filters down, but just think about the upper school alone, where it's really the first opportunity for kids en masse to choose what classes they want to be part of. When you've got graduating classes of 2 years ago 60, last year 40, this year 53, 54, it's a little bit of this in terms of size. That's really difficult internally to schedule for. If you don't know how many kids you're going to have year to year, or it's going to vary year to year, having the right number of teachers and the right number of class offerings for kids to choose the spring previous is really difficult. And the second thing, I think a little more obviously, is a budget standpoint. Again, when you've got class sizes doing this, what you're not going to do as a school community, at least what I'm not going to do as a school leader, is look at last year's graduating class of 40, so 20 fewer kids than we had the year previous, and say, okay, you three teachers, we can't afford you anymore, so take a year off. It doesn't work that way. So from an efficiency standpoint, from a budgeting standpoint, having a consistent number of students in each of your classes allows the planning process to be a lot more efficient, a lot more effective, quite frankly. So what a strategic enrollment plan does is literally, it's kind of boring work. It's a big old spreadsheet, which again, the eyes start to roll back in your head, and I get that. But essentially, it's just plotting your numbers as they currently stand year after year. And then looking from a strategic standpoint, looking at where you need to apply strategic thinking. So the examples I've already given, odd class sizes, 60 to 40 to 53, that's something we want to address. So we're trying to identify what that right number is for the high school. It's still early in the process. I'm at this point thinking it's 52 to 55. It's probably the right number for a high school class here at Augusta Prep. So once you identify that number, and you do that for each of your classes, and once you identify what that right number is, you then strategically look at that list and say, okay, over the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, how are we going to make that happen? Are we going to start to say no to some folks? We have 64 kids in the current sophomore class. So last year, we have 64 students in our freshman class, which, if 55 is the right number, that's too many. So, wonderful situation. And I'm learning more and more why Augusta Prep is the place to be, but a wonderful situation where a strategic enrollment plan means you need to say no to more people. Good situation for the school, certainly. But the flip side is also true. As you look at your numbers across the board, you're going to identify areas where, and and this is not the case necessarily at Augusta Prep, but you may look at second grade and say, oh my gosh, we've got 11 open spots in second grade. How are we going to make that happen? How are we going to strategically apply our financial aid? How are we going to market and recruit the right kids, the right families for that specific grade? The other thing you may find as you look at strategic enrollment plan is an imbalance from boys and girls in a classroom. And ultimately, you'd like a 50-50 balance. And whether it's birth rates or any other variable, typically you'll look at certain grades and say, oh my gosh, we've got 65% boys, 65% girls, whatever it is. So you may look at a 5-year plan to balance that out as well. So it's really an opportunity for us to look at how we're going to use our resources well. Our resources in this case would be our time, how we're going to recruit the market, specifically for second grade, specifically for boys in ninth grade, whatever it is we need. And then how are we going to use our financial aid dollars. So we have a budget just under $1 million every year that's spent on financial aid to help them be part of our community. And we need to be real strategic with how that is used, because as you can imagine, the requests for financial aid are more than $1 million. So if I could honor every request, I would, but we're not in that situation. I don't know that any school is. So we need to be real strategic, real thoughtful about how we use that money. So that's really what the strategic enrollment plan will do for us. Increasing access to professional development is really important for me personally. That's something I think is really, really key for us. I talk a lot with our faculty, with our administrative team, and certainly reflected on myself. I talk a lot about us being role models. And I'm not a big fan of being a hypocrite. So if we every day spend our time, our energy with 550 students, encouraging them, helping them be lifelong learners, and we don't reflect that in ourselves, something's not adding up. So it's really important to me that from a professional standpoint, we offer professional development for our faculty, and not just our faculty, but the folks that we met here this morning as well. And myself, I need to continue to be a lifelong learner as well. So we've done a couple of things already to make that happen. We've, number one, streamlined the process for our faculty to apply for that financial aid. Financial aid too, but for professional development. So that all comes through the division heads. We talked about it as a group. We have a division head meeting this morning. I presume there will be some professional development requests to talk about that. So that process has been streamlined a little bit. And then the other thing I really like that we started doing last family night last spring, I think it was in February. We've got our teachers. We've got incredible people on campus, as many of you know. And we've got really fun stuff, innovative stuff happening in our classrooms. So what we've started doing is having our teachers teach the teachers on campus. So we've internalized some of our professional development. We did it on maths where we offered, somebody remind me, 8 or 9 maybe different sessions during family night afternoon last February. And we had each of those stations staffed with one exception. We had a website expert come in, a psychologist come in. But every other station was staffed by our faculty and staff. And people chose to rotate around to these sessions and learn what was happening in others' classrooms. Or VJ, for instance, CFO, VJ did a really powerful session on opening up our books, showing our faculty, here's our budget, this is what we do with our money, and here's how the financial aid works. And apparently that went over really well, and the transparency was important because we continue to hear good things about that. So we are internalizing a lot of that professional development, which increases the access. And then I mentioned family nights. Family nights, I hope, are reflecting well in the community and make a statement that, oh, that's important to us as a school, which is our families, having a balanced life as much as we possibly can, although that's really difficult. But it's also an opportunity for us at least 2 times a year to shut things down and look internally. And every after those 2 afternoons, just so you're aware, on family nights, what we're doing internally is professional development. And that time previously didn't exist. So again, it's about carving out the time, it's about dedicating the resources that we have to something that's really important or prioritizing. And professional development for our people is definitely a priority. So we're trying to increase the access to that as much as we possibly can. Number 4 is something that you really don't need to worry too much about. It is almost a purely internal piece, but I certainly didn't want to ignore it this morning. You may be aware, you may not be, but the system that we do all of our billing through, all of our academic reporting through, all of our registrations for after school, all of our development work, our admissions work, virtually the entire campus is run through a program called Blackboard. It's one of 3 big ones nationally that schools typically adopt. Universities as well use it. They are big monsters. It's essentially a huge database that's connected to the development office, the admissions office, academics, you name it. And again, there are 3 big players. Our contract with Blackboard, who was the one that we use, and I think it's probably, I don't have this data, but I suspect it's probably the most widely used in the country. Our contract with them is up in January 2019. So we're going to use that opportunity to look at other options. So we've got an internal committee looking at the other two big players, and certainly looking at Blackbaud almost as a new vendor, because they're reinventing themselves. They're coming out with new modules in virtually every one of those areas I just mentioned. So even if we stay with Blackbaud, which we may do, it's going to feel new to us. So we took that opportunity to say, well, if we were ever going to look elsewhere, this is the time. So we've got a committee put together, and we hope to make that decision by this January and give ourselves 12 months to get ready for whatever it's going to be. Is it going to be the new version of Blackbaud, or is it going to be a brand new system? Because there will be some training involved, both internally and a little bit for you as well as the community as well. So we're working on that internally. Benchmark at faculty staff salaries. This is incredibly important as well, because it's really important to us administratively that we reflect on our faculty that they are being treated as fairly as we possibly can. I don't know the answer yet, but the question we're essentially asking is just that. Are the faculty here at Augusta Prep being treated from a compensation standpoint? And that's not just salary. There are a lot of other pieces that go into that, and that's partly our job as well, to make sure our faculty understand all the pieces, the benefits, all the compensation pieces that go into a contract here at Augusta Prep. So we're going to do that. We're going to do more of that. But we are going to look externally as well. We're going to look regionally at both the private and the public pay scales. And again, I don't know the answer yet, but we're looking to see if there's a gap. Is there a gap between what we're paying, how we're compensating our faculty and administrators, and how the public schools do it, and or how similar independent schools in our region do it? And again, I don't know the answer yet, but I can tell you that if there is a gap, then our goal will be to put a plan in place. It may be a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan, but we're going to put a plan in place to close that gap as much as we can possibly do. So I would say nationally, it's very typical for independent school educators to be paid, purely paid in terms of cash coming in, a little bit less than public school counterparts. That's typical. I would argue there are a lot more benefits on the independent school side, so I'm a little biased about that as well. So that's the two things we're going to tackle. We're going to do a better job communicating to our faculty what their true compensation looks like, because there's nothing to hide. We just want to make sure they're aware of everything that's coming their way. And then we are going to look externally, regionally, and try to identify whether there's a gap or not. And if there is, try to put a plan in place to close that gap as much as we fiscally can. That's incredibly important to us. Okay, the advisory program. For those of you who have students in the upper school, I hope you're already hearing some of the improvements that we've put in place. We have what I would argue is a very strong advisory program in middle school. So we actually use that as a bit of a model in a lot of ways. And under Andy's leadership, dating back even last spring before he was technically on board, it was great. We got free work out of Andy. It was perfect. Dating back last spring, he was on campus and started leading this process. And this is one of those initiatives where I've checked a lot of the boxes that we've accomplished. It's an ongoing process because every year we want to make it even better. But it is worldly better. The advisory program in the upper school is worldly better today than it was just a couple months ago. So we've got a faculty now that have gotten some training, for one, which is important, on what we want them to accomplish during these times, because previously I would argue that the quality of your advisory time with your students depended completely on the individual. There wasn't a lot of purposeful programming around the advisory program. And we've changed that. So now we've got some training in place, and the thing I really like is that we've got essentially a curriculum developed for what we want conveyed to the students in each of these times. And there are things like study skills and life skills, things that are more difficult to weave into a calculus lesson per se. But we can spend our 20 minutes with those students. We've got 25 different times carved out during the course of the year, where we've got purposeful time planned with our advisors. Not that that's the only contact the students will have with their advisor, but purposeful time blocked off 25 times during the course of the year to cover this quote-unquote curriculum with the kids, which is a huge improvement. Portrait of a Graduate is an important piece as well. A lot of the strategic initiatives that we will talk about today, and certainly talk about going forward, are really going to, in many ways, spawn from a Portrait of a Graduate. So we're not inventing the concept of a Portrait of a Graduate. A lot of schools do that. But essentially what we've done, and we started the process this fall during pre-planning with the faculty, we've really gone to our faculty to start with and said to them, we want you to help us define what a portrait of a graduate looks like. And one of the important distinctions that I made during the exercise that we completed during pre-planning was that we're not going to design what we think is the perfect graduate from Augusta Prep and then expect every single student that walks across that stage, all 55 students that are continuously, hopefully every year, walking across that stage, 52, 55, whatever it happens to be. We don't expect every one of them to match up. to every ideal that we come with. What we're doing is building a portrait of a graduate to help us aspire and help our students understand what to aspire to. So we could do the same thing, I guess, from a faculty staff standpoint, from a head of school standpoint. We could do a portrait of a perfect head of school. I'm not going to match up in all those categories, but it's going to give me a target to aim for, both from a teaching standpoint and from a student standpoint. And that's really what we're trying to accomplish. So we've gone to our faculty and started with some leading questions and said, finish this sentence. I am proud that our graduates can fill in the blank. I am proud that our graduates are fill in the blank. Or the aspirational piece, which is I wish that our graduates could fill in the blank. And as we're working through this process very collaboratively on campus, we will end up with a portrait of a graduate. And we will then be able to reflect that on us as a school. Does our mission match up with what our ideals are? We'll be able to match up with our curriculum. We'll be able to match up with our extracurricular activities. Virtually everything we do on our campus can then be reflected upon our portrait of a graduate and say, okay, if we have said, for instance, this has certainly come up, whether it ends up in the portrait, I can't say at this point, but having a worldwide perspective, very worldly perspective of what's happening. If that's important to us, and that shows up in the portrait of a graduate, then one of the things we're going to do with that document, I hope it's posted in every classroom, in every meeting we have, because it means that we better have some things in place from a purposeful standpoint that is actually making that happen. Because we can't say that that's important and then not make it happen.
Sounds like that would be integral to your enrollment plan.
Correct. Two go hand in hand, no question. As we look strategically to fill a class with the students and families that we want on our campus, we want to make sure they're matching up. And from an enrollment standpoint, to drill on that a little bit further, from an enrollment standpoint, when you think about the portrait of a graduate, likely it's going to be, if it was an individual student, and again, that's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to create the perfect individual student and then replicate that student. That's not really the goal. But if you look at it that way for a moment, it's going to be a student who's your National Merit Scholar. It's going to be your student who's incredibly inquisitive in the classroom. It's going to be your student who's a star athlete. It's going to be your student who's starring out there on the stage. It's going to be all those things because that's who we are as a school. So that's going to be reflected in the portrait. I'm very confident. But how many of those kids come along? You might see 5 or 6 a generation of the kid that, is the quarterback on the football team and is the star swimmer and is center stage here and is a National Merit Scholar. They don't come along every day. So from an enrollment standpoint, we're not going to have 55 of those kids in every class. But what we're going to have is a class balanced with National Merit Scholars and athletes and artisans, lesbians, and people. So it's about a balance, exactly. It's about a balance, and that's what both the strategic plan the strategic enrollment plan and the portrait of a graduate will help us do. So that's a real important process, and it's really, I've talked a lot about growth mindset this year, obviously, and I'll continue to do so. One of the things I love about growth mindset is it really forces you to focus on the process, at least as much, if not more, than the product. And when I think about this process, the portrait of a graduate process that we've engaged in with our faculty, watching it happen, watching the conversations that end up happening, watching the debates that end up happening, watching people step out of their comfort zone and maybe talk about something that they aren't really an expert in, that has been, at least to date, as much fun as the progress that we've made. So the process, again, is really important, at least as much, if not more important than the product. Technology integration plan, you're seeing that happen. I would argue in the lower school, virtually every classroom has some sort of technology. It's either an iPad or a Chromebook or that sort of thing infused in. I know 4th grade, for instance. I know a little bit more about 4th grade this year because that's where Xavier is, and he's loving the fact that they have class sets of Chromebooks that they're using virtually every day in 4th grade. We've now got 5th grade fully on board with the Chromebook program. And our goal with the technology integration plan at this point, we certainly won't go year by year. So it's not going to be another, for instance, 7 years before we have technology better integrated in the upper school. It's not going to be a yearly process. We're going to go a lot quicker than that. But defining what that pace is and defining what it looks like by division is really what we're tackling as a technology integration plan. And I think it's important for obvious reasons. Our job is to get these kids ready to be successful, certainly at college or college prep school, but beyond. And we can fight it as much as we want, but technology is a huge part of their world and certainly will be going forward. So we're trying to find the right ways to integrate all that technology into their lives. And again, through 5th grade, we've got it very purposely integrated, and that certainly will continue. Safety and security measures, that is, again, a few of these you may have noticed have got ongoing, because it's not something that we don't have a meeting and say, okay, we've checked on our safety and security, check it off, and never have a meeting. Something like this, it will be an ongoing process for the next X number of years, probably the entire history of our school. The two things that are important for you to recognize is, as we're meeting as a safety committee at this point, we have two focuses this year. The first is to look at access. So we're taking a hard look at what doors are locked on campus at the moment. Do we need some sort of key card program to get in and out of buildings? Our buildings locked when they shouldn't be locked, our buildings open when they shouldn't be open. So we're really focused on access. We're taking a hard look at that on campus, and we'll be making some decisions around that this year. And then the other, and this is a process that we started last year, not started, that's not fair because it's been ongoing, but we've really dug deep into, is our drilling. So we're looking at our fire drills, we're looking at our lockdown drills, we're looking at our tornado drills, and making sure, A, that everybody is aware of what's supposed to happen. So we've done a lot, we just had fire drills yesterday to make sure that we're always practicing. And we're also taking a hard look at what is new. So lockdown drills, the traditional lockdown drill in a school setting has always been, you huddle, you get as far away from windows and doors as you can, you huddle as a group, you kind of try to get out of sight, and you wait for the authorities to show up. It hasn't been a whole lot more complicated. There's now a movement at certain ages to talk about kind of a scattering program. That if there truly is a lockdown because there's an active shooter on your campus, there are some that feel like the best thing to do at a certain age. I'm not suggesting that 3-year-olds are going to be sent into the woods. We're not going to do that. But at a certain age, that the most appropriate, safest thing to do is to tell the kids to scatter and kind of have a central meeting point. We haven't gotten there yet, so our traditional lockdown drill is in place. We're very traditional in terms of huddle, and we will be for short term at least, but we're taking a hard look and bringing some experts on campus to talk us through what that scatter may look like. And if that's something we adopt, we certainly will let you know, and that will become part of our drilling as well. But access and drilling for any type of emergency is really the focus from a safety and security standpoint. And then number 10, I admittedly, I contemplated not even putting this one up there, but I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you with this. We aren't, and I don't want anybody leaving today thinking that, oh my gosh, there's going to be a capital campaign next week, and Pam's going to start raising money for a new building next week. That's not happening. But what is happening is, good or bad, new eyes have come to campus. And as I walk around campus, what I'm finding is that we have a lot of potential for what we can do on our campus, from facilities, from a structural standpoint. And it's not just me by any means. There's a lot of data that's been gathered over the last 4 to 6 years that I'm siphoning through various strategic planning initiatives. And I'm taking all that information in addition to the experience I have and what we're seeing elsewhere. We will certainly be visiting other schools. We're going to take all of those data points, certainly be communicating with the community as well. But we're starting the process by having conversations, at this point mainly informal. So I'll have a thought hit me as I'm walking down the upper school hallway of something we could do to improve that space, and I'll stop a group of kids and talk to them. So we're starting that process in a very informal way. It'll get more and more formal as we go down the road. But I think that the 3 focus areas will be, as we get more down the road, thinking about facilities, thinking about our campus, we can take what we have improved. So I think about the upper school next door. The upper school building was built in the mid-60s. And education, and maybe most importantly, the kids have changed since the mid-60s. They're a lot bigger. So when you've got 3 high school kids, boys specifically, and I was one of them, the big guys walking down the hallway, it looks different than it did 50, 60 years ago. So I think that there are things we can do, and upper school is just an example, but I think there are things we can do with our current existing buildings. We don't need to blow them up and start from scratch, but I think there are things we can do to improve the spaces we have, both from a technology and educational standpoint, and also just from a physical space. Maybe warm it up a little bit. Is there something we can do to create more space for some of these big kids that have on our campus? So there's that piece, improve what we have. The second, admittedly, is more space. We need more space. And this is where I'm going to trust you to hear what I'm saying. We don't need more space. I'm not talking about a strategic enrollment plan that we need to become a school of 700 students. I don't think that's who Augusta Prep is. I don't think that's who we're going to try to become. We don't need more space for more kids. Now, we have 555 students on campus. Through a strategic enrollment plan, maybe we're a school of 575. I'm not saying there will be any incremental growth. But we don't need to add space to become a different school. We need to add space to become a better school. And the space specifically that I think we need to focus on is in sciences from an academic standpoint, and in kind of living space for our student life So academically, we need better science labs, and we need what I refer to as tinker space or maker space. And we've really, over in the middle school this year, this summer, with the help of a donor, we took a very traditional computer lab, seats and rows of CPUs all lined up, and we did blow that up. We didn't physically blow it up. The kids would have loved that part too, but we didn't physically blow it up. But we got rid of all those old CPUs, and every mobile device, every computer device in that room is now mobile. It's round tables, so the kids are all over the place. And if you go in Lauren Ivy's classroom, rarely, I can't imagine ever, she's standing up in front of the class and lecturing. She has gone from the sage on the stage to the guide on the side. And what happens in that classroom now is robotics. It's programming. Nick uses the same room after school for some of his computing program. And to watch what's happening, mainly, now it's got a lot to do with the teaching style. It's got a lot to do with the quality of teacher in that classroom. But it's also got a lot to do with physical space. What Lauren's doing in that classroom, that maker space, and it's small, it's not what my vision would be long term, but it's a bit of a trial balloon for us. And to watch what she's able to do educationally in that classroom with those kids is truly remarkable. So we've got, it's 7th grade that's going to be competing Lego, correct?
It's 7th and 8th.
7th and 8th, okay. Lego first program, right? So it's a competition where our 7th and 8th graders are literally, out of Legos, building robots, taking the brain, as they call it, of the robot, plugging it into a computer and programming that robot that they built to run through basically a maze, to run through an obstacle course. And they're going to be competing with kids across the country with this program. So to watch all that happen is amazing. So that is a small microcosm of what I think we can do with some maker spaces, tinker spaces on campus. The traditional classroom will be alive and well 50 years from now. I truly believe that, both here at Augusta Prep and in general. But there will also be some of these maker spaces, tinker spaces, so we can do some innovative things. And that we don't have on campus. So we need to add space, we need to add science labs, we need to add these tinker spaces. And then I referred to the student life piece too. As I walk around campus, they're built in. I mean, there's one right behind this building. What I would refer to as kind of courtyard areas. It wouldn't take a whole lot of effort to turn that into a very nice meeting space with some nice seating, some picnic tables, some areas for kids to sit and eat lunch, maybe for parents, for parent league. Parent league might not be meeting in the lobby of the gym anymore because we'll have a beautiful courtyard for you to eat in. So I just think there's a lot that we can do on our campus. We're very fortunate with 55 beautiful acres, but I think there are parts of it that we can really dress up and, again, not with a whole lot of effort, turn it into a much nicer, calmer, friendlier area on our campus. So those are really the 3 areas. Improve what we have. We definitely need to add space, not to get bigger, but we need to add space to get better academically. And then I think there are some areas outside, outdoor areas, student life areas that we can improve upon as well. And then, I lost it. Clearly you talk too much when the computer goes away. And then recognize and celebrate our faculty and staff. That again is an ongoing piece. And we're finding new ways to do that. One of the things that I really like that we started during our family, so on family nights, you wouldn't be aware, on family nights when we do that, what that provides us an opportunity for is at lunchtime, the entire faculty eats together, which is really fun. And we've taken that opportunity to celebrate each other. So they can stand up and say, okay, look, this so-and-so, and it's something that we would not be aware of. So-and-so has helped me in my classroom by helping with this project, or whatever the case is, we can take our time to celebrate. I know the division heads are starting to do that in their own faculty meetings. So just taking time out to celebrate each other, because we don't, in the run of the day, especially classroom faculty, don't get a lot of affirmation from the kids, as you can imagine. Now, it comes intrinsically, but very rarely will a 4th grader go up to their teacher and say, I really appreciate the time you put into grading this paper. I typically don't do that. We don't celebrate each other internally. That's a big piece of it as well. So those are the 11. That was a lot of stuff to throw out to you. I know we're running actually a little longer than I mentioned, so I apologize for that. But I'm certainly happy to take any questions, any comments.
That was very informative and very helpful.
Good.
Really exciting.
I always start with people, and you met a lot of them this morning, but certainly passionate, but they're phenomenal people doing incredible stuff. I'm still learning a lot about our school, and that's where I start, because it's incredible to me to watch what's happening. But you're right, there's some exciting stuff to come as well.
Yeah, I think too, when you were saying just with the, your portrait of a graduate and, the different scopes that that might cover. But I remember, what hit me, so just really stuck with me was your motto, to be rather than to see.
agree, and the vast majority of kids will, from the honor code perspective, stay within bounds on the honor code, but some don't. And I would argue that the honor code and how we manage things on campus is maybe even more important for those rare situations than the kids that stay in bounds all the time, because they learn some incredibly valuable lessons. And the way our honor code is set up, especially in the upper school, it's, for the most part, students adjudicating students. It's not even a bunch of adults having a meeting saying, you're in trouble, because it's the students who have been voted into those positions, turning to their peers and saying, dude, you screwed up. And here's what's going to happen as a result. That is, first of all, it's a huge deterrent. Most kids would rather sit in front of a panel of adults than their peers and admit that they did something wrong. So it's a huge deterrent, but when something happens, and it does, the kids slip up. It's incredibly valuable. That's the growth mindset that we talk about that they're learning. And if they don't, well, that's a whole other situation, a whole other conversation, but for the most part, they're learning really valuable lessons. It's very true. Yes, ma'am?
I have a question about something that we don't like to talk about,
Okay.
but it's tuition.
Okay.
So it's been kind of understood by independent school parents that tuition goes up every year. Kind of what I've been told by other parents. This summer I had an interesting conversation with a member of the board of trustees at St. John's School in San Juan, Puerto Rico, which is where I went to school, independent school. And he's a financial guy, and they asked him to serve on the board. He was there for 7 years and they never raised tuition.
Interesting.
And then his family moved to Portland. His kids are at Catton Gable now.
Yes, I know other schools. Yes. Yeah.
And after a year, they raised tuition. He said, well, you're going to raise tuition, not explain why. And this is our 14th year at Pratt. And, you know, our financial plan didn't really take into account that it would go up every single year.
Okay.
And it gets painful.
Got it.
And so I guess my thing is, explain to us each year, tuition has to go up each year. Why?
Sure.
Because our income doesn't go up every year.
That's fair.
It's never been, my husband's at NCG, GRU, GHSUA, whatever you want to call it, right? We have a lot of parents who are from the medical community.
Sure.
And, you know, we're lucky if we get a raise every 3 or 4 years.
Got it.
So,
That's transparency.
so I just want awareness of that, you know, as parents who are committed to the school and to our children, giving them the best.
Yep.
We feel prep is the best.
Sure.
There should be some consideration of how painful that gets. And next year, I've got twins in 8th grade moving up to high school, where there's a big jump in tuition, and tuition goes up in every division every year anyway.
Sure.
So it's on my mind a lot right now.
Okay, that's a great point, Jenny. That's something we'll consider internally. How can we better, transparently, how can we better communicate that? I'm happy to talk about what this past year. I mean, obviously, I have the entirety of 12 months of experience to speak to at Prep, but I think our experience is very similar to most independent day schools. So I can say, so last year's tuition increase was 4.75. Our number one, and roughly, BJ can tell you right off the bat, I think we're at 81, maybe 82% dependent on tuition for all of our revenue. So heavily tuition dependent. My guess would be St. John's maybe a lot less dependent on tuition. I don't know that.
Kind of in depth. It's a 100-year-old school, so
Sure.
this is significantly older than
Huge
that.
endowments and all that stuff. Maybe, I don't know, but I can say that for us, 82% dependent on tuition revenue needs. How that goes is how we go, as you can imagine. And then by far, our number one expense is compensation. So what we did last year, and this hasn't happened every year, but my goal is to make sure it does, so you've seen it on here, strategic planning. Last year what we did, and I'd like to frankly do even more, but last year we did 3% increase across the board for all of our faculty and staff. And then from a compensation standpoint, it wasn't represented in paychecks, unfortunately, but we had on average, and it depended on whether you had a family plan or individual plan, but the benefit package that we offered, the average increase we had for our faculty was 18% increase last year. And a lot of that had to do with the Affordable Care Act coming on board, frankly. So our number one expense by far was compensation, and we purposely pushed that up 3% to honor the work that's happening on our campus. And then in addition to that, the benefit piece. I can't dispute it for you, but whatever percentage is left after that of the 4.75 would just be the incremental increase of supplies and everything else, which keeps
So do
increasing.
you foresee that independent school tuition will always go up every year, or is it that we need an endowment that helps to cover more costs? How does that work?
I literally do not know of any independent schools, stateside at least, that are not raising tuition every year. So I would think it's fair to expect that, yes. What that number looks like will be more dependent on what you have for an endowment and how your increases in the So if we don't have an 18% increase every year in our healthcare benefits, which I certainly hope we don't, that may give us more flexibility. But the 4.75 it was middle of the road. I think, if I remember correctly, and some of you may know more than I do, I think EDS was 7% and Westminster was 3%. So we were kind of in the middle of where we're going. And I think that's probably to be expected going forward. So I would be a fool to say my plan is to not raise tuition because we'd have to close our doors at some point. I'm not interested in that. So yes, I would think it's probably going to continue. But my goal would be certainly to eliminate it if possible, but to limit it so that we're not pricing ourselves A, out of the market, and B, the diversity is important. You know? So here's what's happened. So again, in the interest of transparency, we have for the 3 years running, we have not increased our financial aid limit. It has stayed stagnant, while tuition has increased over those 3 years. So what that means is, from a percentage basis, we have less financial aid. The number hasn't changed, but because tuition has increased, we have less financial aid. So that's even more important than strategic moment. It's important for us to be strategic about how we're using that money, and I would want that money to spend. Good point.
I'll find out why St. John's was able to hold tuition. I'll let you know.
I would love to know. My bet is there's a huge endowment, and the spin-off from that endowment is covering either financial aid, which is essentially keeping tuition down, or they had a big donor come in and say, for the next 5 years, I don't want tuition to go.
I think another thing, they weren't able to grow as quickly in their facilities as perhaps because the school's 100 years old and they just got a gym in the last 10 years.
Oh, wow, okay.
It's the city school.
Okay.
But the progress has been slow, and I'm grateful for the gorgeous facilities my kids have the opportunity to work here.
Sure.
So.
And one more plug, and this isn't meant to be dismissive of the challenges that come with tuition increase at all, Jenny, but just as a point of interest. The other thing that we can brag about as a school is we've been ranked as the 11th best independent school in the state of Georgia. And the top 9 are all Atlanta schools, when you think about the budgets they have. And number 10 is Athens Academy. So I ran a few numbers, and I looked at those top 10 from a tuition standpoint. And the average tuition of the top 10 schools ranked ahead of us, the only 10 schools ranked ahead of us, the average tuition is over $23,000 for high school. Ours is just over 60. So from a value proposition, what you're getting here is incredible. But that again, that's not meant to dismiss what's happening in your home. And I get that.
Well, it also has to do with the cost of living and where you live. Atlanta's an expensive place to live compared to Augusta. People get paid more in Atlanta, and people, doctors in Atlanta get paid more than doctors in Augusta because the cost of living is different. You live in Boston, you get paid more than here. We have a good life for less here. So.
Ran those numbers too. I
those numbers when we moved here.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, Atlanta was, with the indice I used, Atlanta was 8% more expensive, but our tuition is 74% of what theirs is. So it doesn't quite equate, but there's no question that's a factor. Yes, absolutely. Yep.
I love seeing the 11. The notion of looking 3 to 5 years out and where you want to be, that there's something aspirational there, which is, like, to your point, there are probably 3 or 4 major things that you want to achieve, and you still understand. Is there a point at which you can share some of that, like the where we're going piece?
Absolutely.
I agree, all those are really important initiatives, but what they add up to in the end is...
And how they lead to other pieces. Right. So, yes, in fact, and Preston and I have just initiated these conversations, but we'll be doing a marketing piece around our strategic plan. And my early vision for that would be to highly focus on what we're doing each year. So to have these 11 and kind of unpack them a little bit like I did this morning with Fred. And then kind of as a smaller back panel for those that might be interested in looking further ahead, have the entire list of 28. So certainly present it, but not focus on it is kind of my goal. And I, mainly in the interest of time, I didn't go through the others here, other than showing you things that you couldn't read, other than that. But yes, absolutely, I want to share that.
And I assume that there are plenty of board members, something I haven't really explored, but they can contribute to some of these things like, software procurement, right? I'm sure you've got plenty of experts who could assist on your board or parents that could help, right? You go through that a lot. Likewise with the master facility planning, I assume you have a master facilities plan. Those are the kinds of things where I'm sure you've got lots of people who want to help.
We do, and we're always looking for more. So, yes, absolutely, no question. And again, I pointed to the network this summer that was really beneficial to me from a process standpoint, but our regional network of heads too. Like if we need to redo our campus master plan, which we will when we look at add buildings, whether that's 24, 36 months down the road, whenever it happens. I'll just call regional heads and say, who have you used? And we'll have a list of 5 companies to call and go from there. So that's really helpful for me too. Anything else? Oh, Phil, sure.
So this is maybe not so much a strategic plan, but there are some current issues just around, let's say, teaching methodology, right? Teaching what's changing dramatically in our understanding of learning, right? And how is that being incorporated into the way you educate our children, right? I mean, some of those things I have questions about, and maybe it's just me plugging more into.
Okay.
But understanding that a bit more, right? You know, whatever I'm reading, right? If I'm reading the education section of the Times on Thursdays or whatever, right? I somehow then like, I wonder what they're doing to incorporate or dissect, or there's probably 7 reasons why this perspective isn't really proven.
Yep.
How do I get a better understanding of that if I want to feel that sense of?
It's a really good question, and I would argue that the onus on you knowing what's happening in Sosie's classroom, for instance, is not on you, it's on us. And I don't know that we've done enough, meaning we're going to look to do more to communicate to you how we're teaching, why we're teaching that way, to an extent what we're teaching, but to me it's more important the how and the why. And I would argue 2 things. I would argue that number 1, a lot of the things that you may read about on Wednesdays or Thursdays in the Times are probably already happening on our campus to an extent. Maybe in pods and pockets, but some of it's probably already happening, and we just haven't done a good job of sharing that. And number 2, where it's not happening, we now have an incredible team, and really I would look at division heads more than anybody else. We have an incredible team in place that can now drill down on that and say, okay, we're too much stage on the stage in this classroom, so we're going to move a little bit more guidance side, or we're going to look at how a student with a specific learning difference can step into a traditional classroom and still be successful, how we can differentiate, whatever the case may be. So I would argue some of it happening, we just haven't done a good job publicizing it, frankly, or telling you as a parent that we're doing it. And then I'm sure there are areas where we need to do more of it. And now that we've got a team in place, we can start that process.
Those things could be highly engaging. It creates an avenue for us to connect with our kids in a way that is probably more aligned with what you're trying to.
I agree. Yes, ma'am.
Y'all thinking strategically about the enrollment plan. Have y'all looked at, what did you call it? Portrait of a graduate.
Portrait of a graduate, yes.
Looked at, a high school graduate, looked at our graduates and what they ended up studying, like what degrees they got and then what advanced degrees they got. And then they can then bring that back to, because everybody in this room, I'll take the opportunity to say one of the things that concerns me, and I'm an alum, is I went the business route and got an MBA. And there just doesn't seem to be any sort of stuff. Like you mentioned science, that's an area of growth. And I'm just like entrepreneurship or
Yes.
business ownership or just more business.
Sure. I think, let's get even simpler than that. One of the things that we've started talking about is personal finance. Do kids graduate from prep and know how to balance a checkbook? Right. And a lot of that, entrepreneurship, we could spend a lot of time on that. I'm an entrepreneur by nature, so I heard it.
Board of trustees and how many other, they're in business.
Correct, absolutely. Yeah, because it hasn't appeared on screen this morning, doesn't mean that that's not part of the conversation that we're having on campus. So we need to find better and more ways to incorporate that into what we're doing. That being, as you mentioned, entrepreneurship. I've held off a little bit because I am curious what shows up in working. And that will be a guidepost for us. But I'm guessing that the entrepreneurship, the life skill that goes with being able to balance a checkbook and everything else will show up in some way or form. And then we can use that and say, okay, we've now as a community stood up and said this is important to us. Are we doing it? And if the answer is no, then how are we going to fix that?
Well, I'm just really curious to know, you've got so much time and resources to look at this, but the graduates of 2016 and where they are 10 years from now, what degrees did they get and what professions are they in?
Yeah.
How many became doctors, lawyers, business owners, scientists, etc.?
We've talked a lot about that as well. And admittedly, a lot of schools, ourselves included, haven't done a good job their average GPA is when they leave here versus other schools. Comparative data is tough because so few schools do that, but internally it's important for us to know how our kids are doing and that they're not ending up on your couch in your basement after 2 years of college. That doesn't happen when you graduate from prep.
And that enrollment plan is the key.
It's huge, absolutely. So that's, again, one thing that we have not done. Ivy, I know, had to step up, but we've talked a lot with Ivy about that. And literally an initiative we started this year, which we haven't told the kids is part of that master plan because that's data I'd really love to have, is we are now really pushing them toward using their Augusta Prep email addresses, which they've had for some time, but most of them. Email is already passe for kids, which is amazing. But we're really forcing that issue. And my hope is, long term, what we can see is that they probably will have a new address when they go off to college too, but hopefully they'll be used to using their prep address enough so we can encourage a high enough percentage of them for some valuable data so we can check in a couple times. To tell them we love them and we're thinking about them. But we were curious, what are they doing? What kind of programming are they doing? And we just haven't done it.
CEOs or
Sure.
accountants.
Yep. And we get anecdotal pieces, the kids come back and tell us how great they, and that's wonderful, and that's a little bit affirming for us, certainly, but to call that data, it's probably a bit of a stretch. I'd like to change that.
But I think you are including some key things that are necessary for our children to be successful in the workforce. So just the innovation, which you're talking about, I know Mary Beth talked about a lot of collaboration and trying to build more of that. You know, as a professional who hires people, these are key things and competencies that I'm looking for. They're not always easy to find, right? So you're definitely including a lot of good things to help you out.
I appreciate that. We certainly feel the same way, but I think the point is to then have the proof and put it
Absolutely.
later and to be able to reflect that back on the community would be really valuable. I couldn't agree
Like
more.
you said, a strategic plan, I mean, you can think 5 years out, but then the technology will all change, so, you know, what our graduates from 10 years ago are doing will be different than the graduates 10 years. So, I mean, I understand it's difficult and challenging.
Sure.
But I just think a little more emphasis there might be helpful.
Couldn't agree more.
What you're saying too about like the worldly perspective, so it's more global, is that, you know, like these students are still young, but looking past, you know, just like the geographic region. Like I know when we came from New Jersey, right outside of Manhattan, very different from, you know, Augusta and Aiken where we live, even so different from Boston where I grew up. So, you know, and then back to the whole world. So if you have that global perspective, then, you know, it's a little bit more with the bigger picture. And that's sort of what you were saying too, you know, more than just what would be available, like, right in this immediate area.
And that's something, I can't speak to what's happened in the past as much, but I know Ivy last year from a college counseling standpoint, as a bit of an example, really encouraging the kids, and it was fun to watch as they applied to schools, in some cases internationally, but certainly all across the country now. Admittedly, most stayed fairly regional, which is typical, but they looked, and that's even key. We had, what I say, we had 40 kids graduate, they applied to 90 different colleges, which is really, really cool. So. Well, thank you all. I really appreciate it. We are way over time, I know, but it's been a great conversation, so I appreciate you sticking with it.
Hey, I just think this is like so positive, this conversation. Can I ask as parents, do you have any suggestions how we could get more people here? Or what we could do differently or communicate differently to help get more people here to have these great conversations?
So, I'll speak. I think that parents hosting these things is also an easy avenue to foster that. I think that parents actually want to connect and have these conversations. These are the things that actually we talk about when we socialize with other prep parents. How do you think our kids are understanding the world? How do you think the kids are really getting this out of prep? That's a possibility in my view, whether it's a board member or an interested parent willing to host something at their home that can be, you know, at an hour that doesn't take away from your day or somebody's work day. I mean, it would add to your work day.
My day ends?
Yeah, right, yeah, just like mine. And so, you know, that's a possibility. I put that out there because I'm certain that there are a lot of parents that would want to foster that. I mean,
Okay, next month at Kelly's house. Perfect.
but I mean, you know, like I'm certain there are many people that would stand up and say, I'd love to understand how we're training our students for the workplace, right? Just as a particular topic, then connect that back to what does that mean for the portrait or other topics, right? I was a plastics major, in business. I'd love to understand how we're going to keep, Latin alive, right? Things like that might be possible.
Okay, that's a good point.
That's a great idea.
Pam, one thing I remember years ago talking to a friend who children were in independent schools and maybe actually some public schools in Dallas, Texas that kind of acted a little bit more like an independent neighborhood school. But one of the things she said for them was really successful was to have a parent thing like this right after a time when you have parents there watching their kid do something. Right? So if there's a morning event or whatever, that I think this was more kind of in, not necessarily the high school age range. Probably the school was maybe more elementary, middle school. I can't exactly remember. But that for them, that was it was a defined amount of time.
Sure.
And that, probably a defined topic, and that this is what, that they had a bunch of people, like after some little morning whatever that you happen to have all the fourth grade parents there or all the lower school parents or whatever.
Makes sense.
And that for them that was actually a regular thing.
Okay.
That whenever this group did that, they got together.
And I think it falls on our shoulders too, just to spread the word. Like now after I've been here, like when I'm in a football game later on, like I'm going to be sure to talk to the other parents when with, that I did this morning and it was, highly recommended and it's a great way to be involved. I mean, we're really proud parents to have our children here. And the more we know, the more we can be involved, the better things can be. So.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And we do have, currently, maybe we'll look at altering things a little bit, but currently we have 6 of these programs planned, this being the first. And each of the programs, remind me what the next date is now?
I think it's going to be lower school, is that right, Mary?
No, I'm not till February.
Right.
Upper school.
Right. So,
Upper school and college.
and so each of those we do have programmed around a specific topic to target the audience to an extent, this being a little more general. So we're going to make that attempt, but we may want to mix it up a bit too.
And I think one other thing is that I'm horrified at how many of my friends with kids don't read the AP wire. That is the number one most important thing that every parent at the school needs to do. Every week you read the AP wire and know what's going on. And you don't have to read every word. You find the things that are relevant to your life.
Right.
So I think we just need to push that. So I think part of it is communication. If people just don't know, they're not reading it. They have to engage in reading it. But maybe we need to emphasize this is the one thing you must do every week is read this. And as for when to host and where to host, I have no idea. I've been here a long time, and this is not an uncommon occurrence to have a small handful of parents come. Is it evening? Is it morning? Is it fest? I don't know. But I think, communication is definitely part of it. And if we push that AP wire and say, you must read this, this is so important. Even if each head of school sent an email say, this is what you need to read every single week, something. Just, a lot of parents just don't get it, and we've had it for, 2 years at least?
Plus, 3.
Yeah.
Do you think
That's
maybe
not
guest
good.
speakers would help, Pam?
But it's,
So,
Guest speakers.
yeah, like a friend of mine, she wrote a book about a year ago called The Gift with Failure. She has been at probably, I would say, of those 50, she's probably been at 30 of those schools that receive that. She's been all across the country giving talks to parents that want to talk about the gift of failure, what it really means in an educational setting. Those are the kinds of things that I would think would draw parents in and say, I really want to. We used to do that in our local middle school. It was just a walking school, so nobody had to drive anywhere. But we probably had 3 or 4 really, really compelling discussion topics, whether it's what's the latest thinking on high school drinking and drug issues that we should really help tune better into. Right? I don't know if that's what you're trying to foster. It would certainly, in my view, probably get more parents here and engaged in talking about issues that'll probably come back to that portrait and why you really care and why our kids do that.
That's a fair point. Okay. Something we can look at.
we appreciate the time and effort you put into organizing this.
Oh my goodness, well,
Very much.
Pam, it's line share the credit, but it's our pleasure. Like I said, and I really mean it, having these conversations is important for us to do our job better, but it's also really important to sharing and there's transparency involved, so you know what's happening. I don't know that anything is more important. 'Cause we can do all kinds of great work, but if you don't know it, it's kind of a lost cause. Appreciate you all being here this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And spread the word, please.
Yes, I will.